Welcome everyone, Questini here with a discussion about the one issue that I do consider ruins in quite a lot of ways, Total War Warhammer 3, Immortal Empires, and that of course is the issue of auto-resolve. I've talked about this before, I'll continue talking about it, because it is really a problem what happens with regards to the auto-resolve system. So over here, I have Grimgor Ironhide is turn 1 of his campaign. I out-resolved the battle against the ogres that were here, the ogre army. That army was led by an actual leader, and it had some better units than the ones I am about to fight. And I did take some damage, in particular to my orc boys, my orc boar boys, and a bit to my black orcs. Also, Grimgor himself. But if I auto-resolve the battle here against the settlement garrison, and this settlement garrison is a weaker army than the one I just fought. It's also not led by a lord, which is important for the sake of things like leadership and, well, combat ability. If I auto-resolve this, I lose 165 men and 2 entire units, quite crucially. But what if I were to fight that particular battle manually? What result would I get? Well, let's go over it. Okay, so on the actual battlefield, let's use some really simple tactics to win this one. Boar boys a bit in the back, orc boys on the side to protect against flanking attacks, Grimgor over there. And we are going to get the show started. There is 0 chance that the army that I am facing is going to be able to win against me. Absolutely 0 chance. And indeed, they would, of course, lose. But there's also 0 chance that they're going to be able to inflict substantial damage to my forces in this battle. They will certainly hurt my boys a bit, but again, hurting my guys a bit is absolutely not the same as them wiping out 2 entire units. Okay. Let's send the boar boys over there on the side. And the guys that are gonna take the most damage are these ones right here. And we can see the gnoblars are collapsing. We can also see that the ogre bulls are collapsing as well. And the battle is over. I did not lose 2 entire units. And I only lost 20 men. And by the way, that was not necessarily even the most optimal way to play that battle. Okay, so victory, 20 versus 186. To even get close to 186, you would have had to have used extremely bad tactics in that battle. Like, I think like even if I mashed everything together and charged the enemy head on with with my artillery, maybe then I would have taken the number of casualties the game said I should. Now, here's the problem with this. And actually, there's numerous issues that this system creates. First off, what dictates auto-resolve? Well, two things that I've noticed do matter a significant amount. Armor of units, leadership of units. Also, when we're talking about melee units, the amount of damage melee units take is dependent on how many of them you have in your army. So if you have more melee units than range, it's the damage they're going to take is going to be spread out among them. But if you have a situation where you have, let's say, a couple of melee units to protect your flanks, all that kind of stuff, those melee units will consistently take a significant amount of damage. Doesn't matter how good or bad they are, by the way, even in leadership and armor. And the reason this system doesn't hold a candle to reality is, well, units would obviously rout before they die. Like, there are obviously some exceptions, but by and large, units that would take a significant amount of damage in a battle, for most races with the exception of like undead and demons, would be routing in battle. But the game behaves as if all my guys are demons that they're fighting until the bitter end. Now it does get better, and for whatever reason I'm in a situation where like settlement garrisons, like after turn 1, just, I don't know, take a lot of damage. Not sure what that is. Is it the mod that I'm using? Is it something else? I don't know. But you end up with this affair where you end up with this state of affairs where your guys almost always take a very substantial amount of damage in the battles that you are fighting. And the game also behaves as if your guys are going to fight to the death, which is very, very rare. I might also add, this is on Legendary, very hard, with AI stat modifier set to neutral. Now, the problem this creates for you as the player, not so much the AI. The reason it doesn't create issues for AI, though it does have issues with AI, because the AI also will lose entire units. The problem this creates is it forces you as the player to fight a lot of these minor inconsequential battles throughout your entire campaign. Sure, you can build an army where the units don't take a lot of damage, but even with this army, the orc boys I have, even though the army would win virtually every battle in this area, with exception like Zarnagrind itself, the issue that simply gets created over there really lies in the fact that you just are forced to either accept those losses or you take a ridiculous level of damage on your entire army. The reason that's not good is these battles are boring. They're extremely boring, and you're forced as either the player to fight them manually, or you're potentially forced to accept that damage, from which certain races may not replenish. This is the problem that affects certain races than others. This is the reason I talk a lot about casualty replenishment, because it's how you kind of deal with the issue. But another issue that also gets created here lies in the fact that battles on an open field are less worse to deal with without resolve than settlement battles. The problem, as you might imagine, is that if you encounter a legendary lord, an enemy legendary lord, that legendary lord that you might encounter on the field, and you might just be able to out-resolve that legendary lord and his entire army in a campaign. One of the biggest disappointments I actually had in Warhammer 3 was, for instance, in one campaign playing as Boris Ursus, where I just out-resolved a battle against Archaon. Like, I had chased Archaon for a fair amount, cornered him, and then when I did finally corner him, what ended up occurring. When I did corner him, what ended up occurring, to my great disappointment actually, is that I could just auto-resolve my way to victory. And the battles I had to fight in that campaign and many, many other campaigns were the kind of battles that I just fought here. Settlement battles to minimize casualties. These are not battles I could lose. Like, any decent, half-decent player would never lose a battle of that nature. Would never lose units. I mean, the game, like, even if you play extremely poorly, you would not lose entire units. You might take casualties if you use really bad tactics, to be sure. But you would never actually end up losing a battle like that. And certainly not losing units that way, because they would rout, flat out, just rout. Also, one of the reasons you want to auto-resolve field battles and manually fight settlement battles is if you manually fight a field battle against an army, then that army can escape. Whereas if you auto-resolve it, with the exception of like races like the Vampire Coast and the Vampire Count, if you auto-resolve it, you eliminate the entire army that they have on the field. So they don't run away next to a settlement where you might have to deal with the remnants for that army combined with the settlement garrison. Or they might have some kind of reinforcements in range. It creates this campaign dynamic that is not conducive to having a good campaign experience. Because if the enemies you're facing can run away if you manually fight them, and don't run away if you auto-resolve them, then obviously the incentive with field battles is that you just want to auto-resolve them whenever possible, whenever the losses are not too great, because it might create an easier outcome to deal with in your campaign. That is the problem with the way the system currently works in Warhammer 3. The inherent issue. It leads to a bunch of the battles that you're fighting being very, very boring ones, not interesting ones that you know will win. And the ones that you might not win are ones where you might just be able to just click a button and be done with it. Like, consider like one of the worst examples of this. Let's imagine this. Nakari in Wolf 1. Nakari is quite a big threat in battles because of all the charge bonus, all the incredible melee potential that Nakari's army has. But Nakari's army is also a low armor army. You can just simply, like, if you bring a full stack of high elven units, or more than that, then you will almost certainly win in a lot of cases against Nakari's army. But actually fighting that battle on your own, you might lose. Or another example, a really good one, because I've made this point in a lot of videos, Draika. Draika's army is insane to deal with in manual battles. The reason is that her units cause a lot of fear, cause leadership issues, she spell locks you. It's an absolute nightmare, even with really powerful armies, even as the Greenskins, to fight Draika in a manual battle. But the way you defeat Draika is you auto-resolve her field armies by bringing enough force to do so, and it ends up, even though you take damage, it actually ends up less than you might take otherwise, and then you manually fight, and this is the best way of dealing with Draika. You manually fight over the Griffinwood. And by manually fighting over the Griffinwood, you'll minimize your casualties, and eliminating the Griffinwood eliminates her unit recruitment. Without that unit recruitment, she can't recruit Treekin units, so you're in a safe position. It's really the Treekin that caused the most issues. Or yet another example, Claw. Fighting Claw in a manual battle is an exercise in trying to keep your army alive. Because he does have Warlock Engineers, he does have Warlock Masters potentially leading his armies, he's got a lot of spell power, he has nukes, he has Menace from Below. So actually fighting any of Claw's armies in a manual battle is a really bad idea. It's like, it's a surefire way to almost always lose at least one unit because of the nukes. It's a surefire way of taking significant casualties. So you really want to avoid having to fight him in a manual battle. Again, he's just got the potential of really screwing you over with his spells. Skaven and Winds of Magic under the control of the eye make that certainly annoying. So he has the potential of almost certainly doing a significant amount of damage to your army in every battle, so you never want to fight manually against him. And the only battles where you might find manually would be, again, the settlements where you can minimize the casualties. You accept the hit from the nuke, sure, but that's how you really nullify a lot of the advantages that Claw might have in a field battle. Same with Vlad. Like, Vlad is the kind of legendary lord that if you face him in an open battle, even with a really powerful army, he might kill your entire army on his own. His entire army might die, but he might still emerge victorious, and it doesn't matter because he'll recover from that. The way to deal with Vlad is either cornering him in a settlement, with a walled settlement, so you can kill him from range, if you're playing any of the factions that are next to him, like Gelt or Ungrim, or even Azag. Even Dryka may do that, though then again Dryka has the potential of actually killing Vlad in melee. She's that ridiculous. Either cornering him there, or cornering him on the campaign map with a significant number of armies together, so you cannot resolve the situation, remove him from play, as opposed to having to deal with him. It's also this fact, like, it's not just like, oh, you have a lot of annoying, meaningless battles against garrisons to fight in a campaign. No, the system is far worse than that, because it pushes in you in a direction that the actual battles where you might have to put in effort, where you might have to use tactics and strategy, the battles that mean something in a campaign, are precisely the ones where, if you're trying to play the game optimally and maximize your campaign potential and create a great empire, those are precisely the battles that this system will push you to avoid. And look, I've played a decent amount of Warhammer 2 recently. It wasn't that. Like, the system was the exact opposite in Warhammer 2. For instance, I encountered playing as Malekith in Warhammer 2. I have the video on my channel. I encountered, at playing as Malekith with my secondary army, I encountered the Sisters of Twilight. It was literally just the Sisters, a handful of units in their army, and a garrison, and Ariel. And I encountered that army. I couldn't out-resolve it. Fun fact. Legendary Lords, that was a situation. And that army was the toughest battle in the entire campaign. Again, it was just one Lord, one hero, legendary hero. I had the entire Dark Shards, and they almost wiped the floor with me. That's the danger there. With the Sisters of Twilight in Warhammer 3, the number of times I've had to fight them manually is any of Legendary Lords. Because, like, one of the things I do in all my Warhammer 3s, be it Morathi, Astankia, Katep, Tarax, even, though less said with Tarax, but any campaign where I'm dealing with this area, I almost always want to annihilate the Sisters of Twilight. That's because they make poor allies, and their Witchwood gives me a lot of money. And also, they give me a lot of money when I kill them. So, I almost always want to annihilate them in a campaign. Now, I almost never have to fight these sisters in an actual manual battle. Because the out-resolve is obviously not favoring them because of the units they have. Consider the Warhammer, and this is even in a situation where I might have an entire army with them, or compare that to the Warhammer 2 situation where I encountered with the exact same Legendary Lord with basically no army, just a garrison. Yes, it was in a settlement, to be sure, but speaking about settlement battles in Warhammer 2, that the situation where you have to manually fight a lot of the settlement battles, or you might lose half your army. Like the outcome that I got here with Grimgore is the better one, by the way. Like what happens later on in the campaign as the AI builds garrisons, higher level settlements, it actually gets worse. It gets to the point that even an army like the Changeling, who has a lot of high level units with high level of armor, good casualty replenishment, you might lose half your army to a freaking settlement battle in auto-resolve. Half. That's how stupid this system is. But why is this happening? Well, I have the theory that Creative Assembly changed the way the settlement auto-resolve works compared to Warhammer 2. They changed the entire auto-resolve system, to be clear. I think the changes were overall for the better, less bullshit, in some ways. But at the same time, they made one really bad change to it. And that change is that they made every single settlement have a significant benefit for the defender in auto-resolve. Now, I could understand if, like, there's an entire legendary lord with their army there. But if it's just a garrison that has no lord, no unit ranks, no skills that benefit them, because that's what the lord does. They add skills, combat skills to units. They add leadership so the units won't rout. This is the reason why when you're fighting a manual battle versus auto-resolving, like auto-resolve just assumes everyone is annihilated. Like they're fighting to death, they don't break, but chances are if you're fighting a manual battle, you might kill like a third of the army and still win. And this is on legendary very hard. Yes, granted, right now, like I'm not using the stats modifier as I probably should in some ways, but like even with that set to very high, you might wipe out like half the army before the rest of it breaks, routes, and goes away, especially when the enemy doesn't have a lord to keep their leadership in check, because that's what lords do. That's why lord sniping is so important in this game, because it's how you break enemy armies. But no, instead every single garrison is an unbreakable army of demons that will fight tooth and nail. And so are your guys, apparently, an unbreakable army of demons that will fight until they die on the field of battle. Another problem is that, again, armies that are in the field are wiped out. You know what's even more ridiculous about this? Because we know for certain that settlements do get an auto-resolve benefit. Look at this army right here. If I were to attack Hag Grief over here, you know what I do? I wouldn't attack Hag Grief directly. I'd still win if I fought them manually. I would attack this army outside of the settlement, and I would just auto-resolve that. Because I would win that auto-resolve, assuming this army didn't run away, which it might. I would auto-resolve that. That would eliminate not just the army outside, but also the entire garrison. I would get the post-battle loot from the field battle, which would give me a significant amount of resources, money, experience, and then I just walk into the settlement. It is the better solution, by the way. Like, it's something you always want to do. Like, if you're ever attacking a settlement, don't attack it directly. If there's an army just outside of it, attack the army outside of it, unless you believe that they'll run away. If they run away, sure, attack the settlement directly so you can kill both of them. But if they won't run away, like it doesn't matter what type of army it is, by the way. It's like just the fact that you're attacking an army on the field right next to a settlement, this exact same army might even be the exact same map, because a lot of settlements don't have settlement maps. Sure, Hag Grief would have, obviously, a settlement map because it would be a siege. But a lot of the minor settlements, until they get to a higher level of garrison, don't. And even if they do have that settlement type, do you think that makes the battles harder? I'll tell you one thing, I've talked about this. Sieges aren't harder than fighting a field battle. In point of fact, you can minimize casualties to a significant degree in a siege when you're attacking than when you're attacking than in a field battle. Because in a field battle, you're going to have to fight the entire army at the same time, whereas in a siege, you can just kill them one at a time. Just an example, I was playing a campaign as Aranessa, and I besieged Cave von Blight. There was only the garrison and an army just outside the settlement, but like in this particular case, but attacking Cave von Blight directly was the better solution in that particular circumstance, because I could avoid having to deal with the entire army. I minimized my losses. I only lost like 2 units or 3 units in the entire army, and I lost 2 of those units because Vampire Coast has crap leadership and their units collapse into dirt. They are an actual army of demons that crumble into dust, or undead, really. It's a really bad dynamic that has been created for Warhammer 3. That, by the way, doesn't quite exist in Warhammer 2. No, don't get me wrong, Warhammer 2 has a lot of issues with its auto-resolve. I'm not going to try and defend that. But when you fight the field battle, when you're attacking an army on the field, do you know what they do? They run away when you win the auto-resolve. Yes, they survive. You don't just get the I win button, eliminate the army completely from the field, and that's it. Units survive. They might take more damage than they would fight the battle manually. Then if you fight the battle manually, sure. But they still survive, and you also take more damage. So it's like you gotta weigh the pros and cons, whereas in Warhammer 2, in Warhammer 3, it's always ideal to fight every settlement manually, and every field battle auto-resolve it, because you eliminate the army. Or if you're attacking an army outside the settlement, always auto-resolve that, because you'll eliminate all of the defenders of the settlement, and you can just walk in. If you can succeed in the auto-resolve meter, in the auto-resolve battle, like if it's a victory and you don't lose too many units. So it's a really, really bad dynamic that gets created. I understand that there are issues that people might consider far bigger, but to me, when it comes to playing a lot of campaigns, when it comes to putting in a lot of time, effort, and energy in playing campaigns in this game, and I've gotten almost 1,600 hours in Warhammer 3, a lot of it testing stuff, I gotta tell you, this like ruins replayability, because you're forced to do a lot of this stupid crap in your campaigns again and again and again. And it just means that that battles that would be fun and interesting and compelling to play are exactly the ones that you're not fighting. Questinier, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.